Alright, welcome back to Fight Talk MMA. I am Jackson Vandenbosch, and we've got a fun one today. I'm going to be predicting every single UFC pay-per-view in 2026. Obviously a pretty hard thing to do, especially towards the ending months like of October, November, and December, but I tried my best, and we'll look back at this and see how close I really was. So, obviously we have three announcements that we already know of, and that is Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett, UFC 324 on January 24th. This is because Ilya is stepping out due to personal reasons, so this is going to be the interim lightweight title. And then we go 325, Alexander Volkanovski, Diego Lopez 2. Obviously, super disrespectful, like I said in my last video, to Alexander Volkanovski. But that's what the fight they made, and it's going to be an exciting fight for sure. But I'm going to predict that Diego Lopez beats Volk, and you'll see that later in this video, what I do with Lopez next. Then we move on to the BMF title between Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira, the rematch. So now we'll get into my predictions. April 2026, we got UFC 327. I personally believe that Aspinall's not going to be ready to fight, so I think they're going to do an interim heavyweight championship. And I think that's going to be between Alex Pereira and Cyril Gane. So pretty fun matchup there. That's my heavyweight main event. And then obviously the co-main, the trilogy between Merab Dvalishvili and Peter Yan. So this would be a great card, and I truly do think they're going to do something like this. If they don't do Alex Pereira and Cyril Gane, if Tom Aspinall's back, I think they're on that one back between Cyril Gane and Tom Aspinall. But I think that'll be the fights in April. Then we move on in May, UFC 328. Obviously with Alex Pereira moving up to heavyweight, that opens up light heavyweight. And I think the two most deserving guys are going to be Yuri Prohaska and Carlos Ulberg. So that's going to be my main event. And then the co-main event is going to be Joshua Van and Manel Kape, because obviously Pantoja is not going to be ready to come back in May from that injury, and I think Kape is the most deserving contender after just knocking out what's his nuts, Brandon Royval. Yep, that was a great win for him, and I think he deserves a title after that. So that's going to be my co-main and main for UFC 328. We'll move on to June, UFC 329. This is the White House card. So they got to come up with something good, obviously, for this. And I think it's going to be Islam Makhachev versus Ian Machado Gary. Kind of like a Khabib Conor too. That's how Gary markets it anyways. But I think they do Islam. There talks of Islam versus Kamaru Usman. I really hope they don't do that. Obviously, Usman is 1-3 in his last 4 fights. That fight doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But if Islam wins this, then you can put him against Usman later in the year, maybe somebody else. So yeah, that's gonna be my White House card, or my White House main event. For the co-main, I obviously didn't put it on here, but I think it will be something of a women's main event. Maybe you put Shevchenko in there, or maybe Kayla Harrison's ready to get back during that time. But yeah, I think they're going to do a women's main event. UFC 330. This is going to be in July. I think Khamzat Chimaev is finally going to come back for his one title defense of the year, and I think it's going to be against Nasruddin Imavov. Not much to say about this one. I think Chimaev smokes him. Co-main, I don't really know what they would do with that. Yeah, I mean, tough to say, but one thing I do think is that they're going to do 2 main events in July. They've done this in the past, and I think this is finally the return of Ilia Uptoro, and I think he's going to face Paddy Pimblett. I think it's finally here. Pretty crazy to say, but yeah, I mean, I think Paddy Pimblett beats Justin Gaethje, and I think at that point you got to do the interim title versus the real title holder, and that's going to be Topuria and Pimblett. Works out perfectly for the company, and yeah, so 2 main events in July, and man, this will be a banger. I don't know what you put before as a co-main. Doesn't have to be anything special because this will obviously sell itself. Let's move on in August. I think Peter Yan beats. I think he beats Merab in the fight I had earlier. So I think at that point, O'Malley hopefully has beaten Song Yadong, and then they're gonna run that back. Peter Yan O'Malley 2 for the title. Obviously, the first one was just an awesome fight, very controversial. People thought either guy won. It's hard to say who did win. So I think you got to run this back for the title, and that's what I got for UFC 332 in August. Banger. Then we'll go September. UFC 330. I think that's supposed to say 333. Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gane 2. I've watched a couple other people's takes on predicting the pay-per-views, and those people have Alex Pereira beating Cyril Gane if they do that interim title, and I just don't see that happening. But if Alex Pereira does beat him, no doubt they'll do Tom Aspinall versus Alex Pereira, but I actually think Cyril Gane wins that, so I think they're going to run back Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gane, put the belt on Gane so that you could see that it's interim title versus the actual title, and I think they're gonna run it back, and I think Aspinall wins that. So this would be UFC 334, I believe. Islam Makhachev. I had Islam Makhachev versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. Obviously a hot take here because Shavkat just doesn't fight very much. So he was supposed to fight Bilal for I think it was last year, or this past year in July, or maybe a little bit before that, but he got hurt. Obviously, so it's hard to say here. Obviously at this point you would think Islam would beat Ian Gary. That's a hard fight to predict. But yeah, I think you either go Makhachev versus Usman, Makhachev versus Rakhmonov, or Makhachev versus, I think they'll pair up Morales and Carlos Prates. I think the winner of that also has a good chance at facing Islam. But I think if Shavkat can get an extra fight in early in the year, whether it's against Usman, Prates, really anybody, I think he can win that and get himself a title shot pretty easily because the company really likes Rakhmonov. Then we'll go 335, 334. This is the second to last fight of the year. This is normally in MSG. So this one and my last fight of the year, you could honestly switch them. But I think obviously we have Yuri Prohaska holding the belt now after he just beat Carlos Olberg back in April, I think I had. And he's going to fight Azamat Murzakanov after he just beat somebody in the top 5 by knockout, I think. I think he knocks out maybe Magomed Ankalaev is who he beats to propel himself to get into the title shot. But I think they're going to do Yuri Prohaska and Azamat Murzakanov. And then the co-main of that, I think they kind of stacked this card. You got Diego Lopez versus the winner of Evloev and Murphy, Lerone Murphy. I think Evloev beats Murphy. These guys have history already. Obviously, this will be their second fight after Lopez's debut was against him. And I think they run that back. That one would be a hard one to predict, in my opinion. But I think they do that at some point. Then we'll round off the year with Ilya Topuria finally facing Arman Tsarukyan. Arman's obviously got to get a fight before this because the company's not going to give him a title shot straight up off Dan Hooker. They already hate him that much. So I think he's got to fight maybe the winner of Oliveira Holloway to get here to this point. But I do think he gets a title shot, and I think Topuria will be around at that time. So it's finally time to do it. To round off the year, we got Ilya Topuria and Arman Tsarukyan. So there's going to be my predictions as the best predictor on YouTube of predicting every pay-per-view in the year of 2026. This one took a long time. This is very difficult to do, but I had fun doing it. And curious to see how many of these actually end up hitting, because it's so hard to really predict that far out of time, especially with a sport like this where, people can get hurt fast, or they sit out for a while. Title pictures change quickly. But thank you for listening, and I'll catch you next week in the next video.